Have you ever felt a whisper on the wind that didn't sound like the wind? Or looked into the depths of an ancient forest and felt, for just a second, that it was looking back at you? We live in a world that tells us to believe only in what we can see, what we can measure, what we can control. But what if there's more? What if the oldest stories are not just stories, but memories? This is a story about that what if. It's a story about the walls we build between worlds, and the one brave soul who dared to tear them down. It's a story for everyone who has ever felt that there is magic just beyond the edge of sight. So find a comfortable spot, open your mind, and let's step into the world of Legend Forest Eldoria together. Chapter 1. Life on the edge of Eldoria Forest. Alistair lived in the village of Oakhaven, a small settlement nestled against the vast and legendary Eldoria Forest. The village elders always warned against going too deep. They said the forest was inhabited by ancient spirits and creatures that disliked humans. But for Alistair, the forest was a provider. He was an expert woodcutter and a skilled tracker. Every morning, he greeted the forest like an old friend with deep respect. The rhythmic sound of his axe was the only thing that broke the silence of the wilderness, aside from bird songs and the rustle of the wind whispering secrets through the leaves of ancient oaks. Chapter 2. A Dangerous Order. One day, Boris, the arrogant and wealthy butcher, ordered Alistair to cut down a rare white oak tree located deep within the heart of the forest. "I want the biggest and sturdiest table in the entire region," he exclaimed. Alistair refused, knowing that cutting down a white oak was an insult to the forest. But Boris threatened to take away the small hut and plot of land belonging to Alistair's sick father family member. Forced and with a heavy heart, Alistair agreed. Chapter 3. Journey into the Heart of Darkness. The journey into the forest felt different that day. The air felt colder, and sunlight barely penetrated the dense leaf canopy. The sounds of the forest seemed to whisper warnings. Alistair felt eyes watching him from behind the bushes, but every time he turned, there was nothing. He walked for hours, past a river with water clear as crystal, and crossed a moss field that glowed softly in the shade. His feeling of unease grew. Chapter 4. The white oak and the mysterious voice. Finally he arrived. The white oak tree was so majestic, towering high, its trunk so large that 10 people couldn't hug it. Its bark shimmered like pearls under the occasional beam of sunlight. As Alistair raised his axe, his hand trembled. Suddenly, he heard a voice, not the wind. It was a song, sad and melodious, filling the surrounding air like an incantation. The voice came from a golden light behind some bush near the tree's roots. Chapter 5. An impossible discovery. Carefully, Alistair approached. And there he saw her. A woman from no world, he knew. She lay weak, her leg caught in a rusty steel trap, a bear trap left by hunters. Silver blue blood flowed from her wound. Her skin was pale as the full moon, her hair like liquid gold spilled on the ground, and her ears were pointed. An elf, the legend was real, and she was dying. Chapter 6. The choice that changed everything. All the fears and warnings from the village elders screamed in his head. But Alistair saw the pain in the woman's eyes, emerald green eyes filled with tears and fear. He saw a living creature suffering, not a monster. His axe fell to the ground. Without a second thought, he knelt beside her. "I will not hurt you," he whispered, his voice hoarse. The elf's eyes widened in disbelief. Chapter 7. Freeing the elf princess, using his strength and skill, Alistair slowly pried open the rusty trap. Every cry of pain from the elf woman tore at his heart. He ripped his shirt into strips to bandage the strange wound, which emitted a golden light. Her blue blood felt warm on his hands. Once free, the woman tried to stand but fell weakly. The poison from the rusty iron metal lethal to elves had spread through her body. Chapter 8. Name and Bond. "Thank you, child of man," she whispered, her voice like the rustling of leaves. "My name is Seraphina," Alistair introduced himself. He knew he couldn't leave her. With great effort, he lifted Seraphina, who was light as a feather, and carried her to a small cave he knew was nearby, a safe and dry place. Chapter 9. Saving Seraphina, Alistair used all his knowledge of the forest. He searched for specific moss with healing properties, magical roots spoken of in tales, and clear water from a nearby spring. He cared for Seraphina for days, talking to her to keep her conscious, telling her about his simple life in the village. Seraphina, her strength slowly returning, began to trust him. Chapter 10. Lessons from another world. Seraphina reciprocated with stories about her kingdom, Eldoria, the elf city hidden by magic behind the tallest waterfall. She taught him the language of the trees, about how the forest was not to be dominated, but to be protected. She showed him flowers that glowed in the dark and how to hear the song of the stars. Alistair felt his eyes opening for the first time. His world suddenly became wider and more magical. Chapter 11. The Human Threat. One morning, Alistair heard rough voices and curses in the distance. Boris, impatient, had followed him into the forest with several of his lackeys, recklessly destroying everything in their path. "Where is my wood, you traitor?" Boris yelled. Chapter 12. Protection. Alistair panicked. Seraphina was still too weak to move or fight. Quickly, he used his tracking skills to create false trails, leading Boris and his men away from the cave. He led them in circles towards dangerous swamps while the forest, as if understanding his intention helped hide his true tracks. Chapter 13. The forest's wrath. Boris, growing increasingly frustrated, foolishly chopped down a small, glowing tree, a sacred elf sapling. As his axe struck, a loud groan echoed throughout the forest. The wind blew fiercely, the sky suddenly darkened. Roots of large trees began to move from within the ground, and a thick fog suddenly descended, blinding Boris and his men, who are now terrified. Chapter 14. A bitter farewell. Seraphina, feeling Eldoria's anger, knew she had to return to calm the forest and prevent it from punishing all humans. Her strength had recovered enough to walk. She stood before Alistair, her eyes shimmering. "You have shown that pure human hearts still exist, Alistair. I will not forget this." She gave him a medallion made of moon-gilded leaves. "As long as you wear this, the forest will know you as a friend." She then vanished into the mist, leaving Alistair alone with a mixed heart. Chapter 15. A different return. Alistair returned to the village. Boris and his lackeys returned pale-faced and terrified, talking about a living forest, cursing anyone who dared enter again. But Alistair was silent. He no longer saw the forest as a resource. He saw it as a friend's home. He stopped being a woodcutter and became a guardian of the forest, ensuring no one would disturb Eldoria's peace again. And sometimes, on full moon nights, he felt he heard a melodious song carried on the wind, reminding him of the adventure and the promise woven between two worlds. Chapter 16. The unexpected summons. Months after the events in the forest, Alistair's life had changed. He became a respected forest guardian, though some villagers still considered him odd. One night, the leaf medallion Seraphina had given him suddenly glowed warmly on his chest. In his mind, he heard Seraphine's faint voice calling, "Alistair, they're invading. Eldoria needs you." The call cut off, leaving him with a deep sense of dread. Chapter 17. Finding the lost path, Alistair knew he had to venture back into the heart of the forest, but this time to find the hidden kingdom. Guided by the medallion and his memory of Seraphine's clues, he followed paths no human had ever tread. His medallion vibrated, leading him through thick walls of mist, along an underground river, and finally to a giant waterfall splitting a cliff face. This was it, the gateway to Eldoria. Chapter 18. The Wounded Elf City. As he passed through the waterfall, which was an illusion, the sight that unfolded left him breathless. Eldoria was a city carved from living trees and gleaming stone, but its beauty was marred. Several tree homes were scorched, moss bridges were severed, and a shroud of grief hung in the air. The faces of the beautiful, ageless elves looked weary and wounded. They watched him with suspicion, but the medallion around his neck made them slowly back away. Chapter 19. Audience with the elf king Alistair was brought before King Oberon, Seraphine's father. The king sat on a throne of living tree roots, his face stern but etched with deep sorrow. "Child of man, my daughter insists you can be trusted." Eldoria was attacked by an orc tribe from the eastern mountains. They are led by an evil shaman who seeks to steal the Heartwood, the heart of Eldoria's power. Seraphina, standing beside the throne, still looked pale. They use rusty iron and dark magic. "Our strength is fading," she added. Chapter 20. An unlikely ally, Alistair didn't hesitate. "What can I do?" King Oberon was taken aback by his willingness. A human willing to help elves? A wise elf elder, Eldrin, stepped forward. "Only a weapon forged of pure metal, sanctified by moonlight, can wound their leader, but we have no smith. Metal is our weakness." Alistair remembered Gendry, an old blacksmith in a neighboring village who had once made swords for knights. He was their only hope. Chapter 21. A secret mission to the human world, escorted by 2 elven guards in disguise. Alistair infiltrated the human world. They found Gendry, a cynical and grumpy old man. At first, Gendry refused, fearful of pointy-eared creatures. But Alistair spoke of Eldoria's devastation, their helplessness, and the importance of nature's balance. He convinced Gendry that if Eldoria fell, the imbalance would affect the human world too. Moved by the urgency and Alistair's sincerity, Gendry finally agreed. Chapter 22. Forging the moonlight sword, they worked in secret through the night. Alistair and the elves gathered rare, pure metal ore from a forest river. Gendry expertly forged it, while the elves sang purification chants under the light of the full moon. The sword began to glow with a soft silvery light, patterns like leaf veins swirling along its blade. They named it Moonthorn. Chapter 23. Betrayal and kidnapping. Boris, still curious about Alistair's change, had been spying and witnessed the sword being taken back into the forest. He saw the elves. Consumed by envy and a desire for reward, he ran to the local lord and reported that Alistair was conspiring with magic creatures and hoarding treasure. The lord's men were dispatched to surround the forest and capture Alistair. In the chaos of the siege, Boris was accidentally captured by orc scouts and taken to their camp. Chapter 24. The Path to Battle. With Moonthorn in hand, Alistair and a small troop of elves rushed to the battlefront. The sight was horrifying. A horde of brutish orcs had surrounded the towering Heartwood tree, its glowing roots already beginning to fade. The orc shaman, tall and adorned with bones, was leading a ritual to tear out the Heartwood's power. Chapter 25. Confrontation with the shaman, a fierce battle erupted. Elves fought with grace and magic, while Alistair, with human strength and resilience, crashed through the orc lines. He headed straight for the shaman. Boris, held captive, saw him and screamed for help. The shaman laughed, using Boris as a living shield. Alistair was faced with a dilemma: save Boris or stop the shaman. Chapter 26. Sacrifice and Victory. In a swift move, Alistair threw a small knife to cut Boris's bonds, making him drop to the ground. It created an opening. He lunged at the shaman. Moonthorn shone brightly, slicing through the shaman's staff and piercing his dark armor. The shaman screamed in agony before turning to dust. With their leader fallen, the orc army fell into chaos and retreated. The Heartwood glowed anew, healing the land and the wounded elves. Chapter 27. Recognition and reward. King Oberon, with deep respect, bowed before Alistair, the highest honor never before bestowed upon any human. "You have saved not only Eldoria, but the balance between our worlds," said the king. Seraphina looked at him with pride and something deeper than gratitude. Chapter 28. Two Worlds. One guardian, Alistair, did not stay in Eldoria forever. He returned to Oakhaven, but now with a new role: ambassador and guardian of the border between the human and elf worlds. His hut became an outpost, and Boris, who had survived and felt indebted, became his most loyal assistant, helping to keep the secret and ward off anyone with ill intentions towards the forest. Chapter 29. An Eternal Bond. The relationship between Alistair and Seraphina blossomed into a rare and beautiful bond. They did not need to be together every day. Sometimes, on the nights of the full moon, Seraphina would visit him and they would walk through the forest, talking about everything. She taught him more about nature, and he shared stories of humanity. Chapter 30. The Guardian's Legacy. Years passed. The legend of the human forest guardian allied with the elves spread, becoming a bedtime story and a warning for those who sought to nature. Alistair lived longer than ordinary men, gifted with longevity by the elf blessing. And when his time finally came, he passed peacefully. A new white oak tree flourished in front of his hut, and it is said that on quiet nights, you could see the silhouette of an elf woman with golden hair sitting beneath it, guarding the hero's legacy forever. Chapter 31. Shadow from the Past. The peace was not eternal. Eldrin, the elf elder, found Alistair in a restless state. "The defeat of the orc shaman has awakened something older and darker," he whispered, his eyes on the river's headwaters, which had begun to turn murky. "The shaman was merely a pawn. We found an ancient symbol carved into the ground of his camp, the symbol of the cult of the deep dark, an ancient sect that believes in the return of a dark god imprisoned beneath the mountains. The new threat was not an army, but a fanatical belief seeking to restore darkness." Chapter 32. The Reluctant Successor. Alistair, who was beginning to feel the weight of his years, even though it was slowed, knew he needed a successor. He trained a curious and talented village youth, Liam, the son of Gendry the blacksmith. But Liam was angry and distrustful of elf fairy tales, still traumatized because his mother was killed by a wolf in the forest the previous year. He saw his father's alliance with Alistair as a betrayal of the human world. Chapter 33. The Plague of Darkness. A strange plague spread in the villages on the forest's edge. Plants withered and rotted, livestock became aggressive with glowing red eyes, and people were plagued by terrifying nightmares that kept them awake. The source? The river water, which had been contaminated by the rituals of the cult of the deep dark upstream. Boris was the first to fall ill. Alistair knew this was no ordinary sickness, but a magical attack. Chapter 34. The Apology and the Plea. With a heavy heart, Alistair approached Liam. "I know you hate me and everything I represent, but look at your father. Look at Boris. This is no natural illness. Only the knowledge of Eldoria can cure this." Liam, seeing his father's suffering, finally relented. His pain overcame his hatred. Grimly, he said, "What must I do?" Chapter 35. Seeking the healing root with a still skeptical Liam, Alistair entered the deepest, most forbidden part of the forest, even for elves, the Valley of Shadows. There, under the light of glowing mushrooms, grew the moon blossom, a rare flower that blooms only during a lunar eclipse and possesses purifying power. The journey was dangerous, filled with illusions that manipulated their deepest fears. Liam was confronted by an illusion of his mother, while Alistair was haunted by shadows of his past failures. Chapter 36. Boris's Sacrifice. As they returned with the moon blossom, Boris's condition worsened. The darkness poison nearly consumed him. With his last strength, Boris whispered to Alistair, I know the location of their base. The cave behind the eastern waterfall... Save them... He then used his dying body as bait. He let the darkness draw him in, giving him a final surge of energy to lead Alistair and a group of elves to the cave entrance before finally collapsing and breathing his last, turning into blackish dust. His final sacrifice to atone for his past greed. Chapter 37. The battle underground. Alistair, Liam, and a troop of elves navigated the dark, winding underground tunnels. They fought against cult members who had lost their humanity, their eyes empty and skin pale. This battle was different. They did not kill, but tried to subdue and awaken them. Liam, witnessing the suffering of the cult's victims, began to understand that the true enemy was the darkness itself, not the people. He fought with new skill, protecting, not attacking. Chapter 38. The Master of Darkness. In the main chamber of the cave, they found the cult leader was not an old shaman, but a young woman from a neighboring village who had disappeared a year ago, Sophia. Her heart was filled with grief and anger after her family was punished by a corrupt lord, making her easy to manipulate by the dark entity. She was attempting to offer Eldoria's heartwood, whose energy could be felt from afar, to awaken her god. Alistair could not kill her. Chapter 39. Redemption and Exile. Alistair spoke to Sophia, not as an enemy, but as a fellow victim of injustice. He told her about Boris, about redemption. Liam, emotional, shouted, "Don't let your sorrow kill others." "My mother died, but I didn't blame the entire forest." Those words touched the last shred of Sophia's humanity. Her ritual was disrupted. The dark entity, enraged, abandoned her, leaving her weak. At Alistair's request, the elves did not punish her, but exiled her to heal her soul's wounds in a safe place. Chapter 40. A New Balance. With the moon blossom, the plague was cured. Liam now became Alistair's eager apprentice, helping to tend the forest and bridge the human and elf worlds. A small council was formed between village elders and elf representatives to oversee the region. Alistair and Seraphina sat under the white oak tree, watching the village and forest live in new harmony. They knew threats would always exist, but now they were not alone. Alistair's legacy was no longer about a single hero, but about a community guarding each other and their world, ensuring the legend of the Forest Guardian would live on longer than any one person. Chapter 41. The Wound That Would Not Heal. The victory over the cult of the Deep Dark left a deep scar. Alistair's soul had been infected by remnants of the darkness from the underground battle. He began to experience horrific nightmares, seeing visions of Eldoria burning and Seraphina turning away from him. Physically, his old wound from the bear trap suddenly reopened and would not heal, oozing a blackish fluid. The elf grant of longevity wrestled with the dark poison inside him. Chapter 42. A Legacy Threatened. Seraphina, feeling Alistair's suffering through their bond, knew that poison could only be purified by the tears of the first tree. Crystallized tears from the elf tree of life that had been destroyed in the ancient war. The only clue lay in an ancient poem that spoke of its location hidden on the island forgotten by time, a place not on any elf map. Chapter 43. A Power Struggle. Meanwhile, in the human kingdom, the old, corrupt ruler died. A power vacuum ignited a fierce rivalry among the nobles. An ambitious and power-hungry lord, Lord Valerius, rose. He knew the legend of Eldoria's power and saw it not as a myth, but as a resource to be conquered and harnessed to strengthen his claim to the throne. His spies began to infiltrate the forest's edge. Chapter 44. Schism and Eldoria. News of Alistair's weakening condition and Lord Valerius's ambitions spread through Eldoria. Some elves, led by a guard captain named Kaelin, began to question King Oberon's open policy towards humans. They believed humans only brought calamity and that Eldoria must seal its borders completely, isolating itself as in ancient times. A schism began to erode the unity of the elf kingdom. Chapter 45. Self-exile, realizing his presence was fueling tension and making him a burden, Alistair decided to exile himself to his old hut on the forest's edge. He asked Liam, now a confident and skilled young man, to represent him in guarding the border. The parting between Alistair and Seraphina was bitter, filled with uncertainty and the fear they might not meet again. Chapter 46. Seeking the lost island, Seraphina, refusing to accept this, decided to search for the tears of the first tree herself. Armed with the ancient poem in her faith, she sailed a small elf boat down a legendary river leading to the sea. Her journey was perilous, facing ancient river monsters and navigating ravines filled with enchanting mists that tried to drown her in beautiful illusions. She had to rely on wisdom, not strength. Chapter 47. Liam's ultimate test, Lord Valerius, through his spies, learned of the void left by Alistair. He sent a small force to clear the forest of strange creatures and take its resources. Liam, now bearing a heavy responsibility, had to lead frightened villagers and a handful of brave, loyal elves against trained soldiers. This was not an epic battle, but a guerrilla fight, using knowledge of the forest as their weapon. Chapter 48. The truth behind the poem Seraphina finally found the island forgotten by time. It was not a physical island, but an oasis in the middle of a hidden lake, protected by illusions, where the fallen trunk of the Tree of Life still lay. The tears were not crystals, but sacred water collected in a basin within the tree's trunk. To obtain it, Seraphina had to offer the tree her cherished memories of Alistair, a heart-wrenching sacrifice. Chapter 49. Reunion and Sacrifice. Seraphina returned with the sacred water just as Liam's battle peaked and Alistair's life force was nearly gone. Liam and the loyal elf guards had managed to repel Lord Valerius' troops with the help of the forest as power they had learned to wield. Seraphina healed Alistair. However, when Alistair opened his eyes, he saw something missing from Seraphine's eyes. The light of their specific memories had faded. She remembered everything, but no longer felt the same emotions. That was the price of his healing. Chapter 50. Legacy of the Bridge. Alistair was healed, but his relationship with Seraphina was forever changed, becoming a partnership based on respect and shared purpose, not the romantic love it once was. Lord Valerius was defeated by a wiser rival supported by whispers of the forest guardian. Kellen and the rebel elves, witnessing Seraphine's sacrifice and Liam's resilience, finally made peace. Alistair, Liam, and Seraphina formed the Guardian Triumvirate, a council of human, elf, and the one between them, Alistair, to officially guard the peace and balance for generations to come. Their story was no longer just a legend, but the foundation of that world's new history. A fragile but hopeful balance had been achieved. The story of Alistair and Eldoria is more than just a fantasy adventure. It is a mirror reflecting profound values about life and our relationship with the world around us. Here are the key takeaways we can ponder. Harmony, not domination. Nature is not an infinite resource to be dominated and exploited, but a complex and beautiful web of life whose balance must be maintained. Like Alistair learning the language of the trees, we must learn to listen to and respect the rhythm of the natural world. Trust is not blindness. Trust is a bridge built from respect and understanding, not from prejudice. Alistair chose to see the suffering in Seraphine's eyes, not the monster from ghost stories. This teaches us to look beyond labels and appearances to find essential truth. Every choice has a consequence. From the greedy Boris to the wounded Sophia, every action, good or bad, triggers a chain of events. This story reminds us to always consider the impact of our choices, both on ourselves and on others. Sacrifice is the highest form of love. The sacrifices of Boris, Seraphine's cherished memories, and Alistair's self-isolation show that true love often requires us to let go of something precious for a greater good. It is an act of courage that transcends self-interest. The wounds of the past are not the end. Both Liam with his trauma and Sophia with her bitterness show that a dark past does not have to determine our future. With support and the choice to forgive both others and oneself, healing and growth are always possible. True strength lies in collaboration. Alistair, a mere human, could not save Eldoria alone. He needed Serafina, Gendry, Liam, and even Boris's sacrifice. The greatest successes are achieved when we acknowledge our weaknesses and are willing to collaborate, embracing the unique strengths of each party. The greatest legacy is not power, but wisdom. Alistair's legacy is not his sword or his longevity, but his teachings about balance, the community he built, and the successor he trained. What truly endures are the good values we pass on to the next generation. Love is fluid and changes. The relationship between Alistair and Serafina evolved from romantic love into a deep partnership based on mutual respect and a shared purpose. This illustrates that love does not have to disappear. It can evolve into a different form, remaining strong and meaningful in its own way. Conclusion. This tale invites us to become guardians in our own lives, guardians of relationships, guardians of nature, guardians of truth, and guardians of balance. The world may be full of darkness in various forms, but as long as there is courage to understand, a willingness to sacrifice, and the wisdom to collaborate, then light and hope will always find a way. May this story continue to resonate in our thoughts and actions every day.